हेलो एवरीवन। कैसे हो आप सब। वेलकम टू कोड क्राफ्टिंग विद सत्यम। आज से हम एक नया सीरीज चालू करने वाले। सीरीज नहीं था, लाइक काफ़ी रिकमेंडेड वीडियो था, काफ़ी लोगों को जाना था, लाइक हाउ दे कैन add load balancer to their existing or create a new project on the EC2 and deploy a load balancer there. Okay, so we'll start with that particular topic today. This will be the introduction video, like what are the key topics and why load balancer is required. We will be going to discuss in this particular video. So if you're new to like deployments and you haven't deployed any application, so before proceeding with this video, I will recommend you to check out this video, which will help you to deploy my Node.js application, your Node.js application on EC2 application. Or there's one more video which you can check this out, which will help like if you are working on a microservice based architecture. Okay, so let's get start with this particular video. So in this particular video, we are going to discuss some few of the important points. So the first point that is like how the basic client server application works. So if you if you're not aware of client server application, then this particular part will help you on this particular topic. Okay. The second thing will is looking like what is the problem with this particular client server application. Okay. The next topic that we are going to see like what is the solution for this particular topic. So as the scope of the video depends on the load balancer, so we will be primarily focusing on the load balancer part, like how load balancer helps you to solve the problem. Fine. The next particular section will be like how load balancer actually works there. So we will be focusing on how load balancer actually helps you to solve your problem of scaling up and down the servers. Okay. Then the next thing that we are going to discuss is the end-to-end flow. Like we will be checking how load balancer actually works there and performs your request and handles it accurately. So जो फर्स्ट पार्ट हम देखने वाले लाइक व्हाट इज बेसिक क्लाइंट सर्वर कम्युनिकेशन, हाउ क्लाइंट इंटरेक्ट्स विद द सर्वर एंड हाउ सर्वर रिस्पॉन्स टू दिस. ओके, so consider you have a UI. This might be any web application or single page application, doesn't matter, and you are sending some request to your backend. Like there is some more backend which can be any backend server like Node.js, Python, Java, depends on your application. Fine. Now what usually happens when you click on a particular button in the UI or you submit a particular form in the UI, the UI sends an HTTP request to the backend. Okay, it sends an HTTP request to backend that hey, I have some data to process, so could you please process that data. So the what server will do, it will take the request, will do some processing. Fine, will do some processing, and once the processing is done, it will just return the data, the process data maybe. Okay, and client will take this data and give back to the user or like display to user. So this is how the basic client server communication works. So now let us see what is the problem this basic client server communication. So let me just open this part. Okay. Now what usually happens since you have a single server. Now let us see what is the problem with this particular client server application. Fine. So you consider as a user one, you send us some request which need to be done a heavy computation. Like let us suppose we want to compute the sum up to 10 raised to power 18 in the backend. Fine. मेरे को कुछ इतना तो सम कैलकुलेट करना है. So you have sent a request to the server that hey, do process this for me, and once you're done just show me the result. So what server will do, it will start computing. So it might take some suppose 2 to 3 to 4 seconds. Okay, let us consider for now it has taken 4 seconds and it has utilized like 10% of memory. Okay, so for now we'll talk in terms of numbers. So let us suppose for 4 seconds it take 4 seconds for API calling, and it has utilized 10% of the memory, so our total memory is around 100%. Now suppose another user comes, user 2. User 2 also want to compute some power like value, so it want to compute 10 raised to power 20 something. Fine. So user 2 has send a request to the backend that hey, I want to get this particular value. Now what backend will do, it will okay, I'll do this computation for you. It will start again. So for now suppose it took 10 seconds and the memory consumed was 20%. So now we are left with 70% of memory. Now consider a scenario that there are more than like 1000 users or maybe 100 users also. So in that particular case, your backend won't be able to send request in a proper manner. So in that case, your backend won't send request very fast. It will like take some period of time. Why? Because your memory allocation is already full. So this is your memory. Fine. This is your memory, and already a lot of, suppose 100 requests are going, like these are going in computing phase, they are still in computing phase, fine. So at that period of time you have to wait a lot, like as a user you have to wait a lot, since your request is so much big and already lot of requests are in processing, because all the requests are handled by a single server. So that is the problem with the single server, that when you have multiple requests, like more than hundred thousands, and depends on the use case of your application, more than lakh requests also at a concurrent time. So in that particular case your server might get crash, fine. So because of this issue we have to use some concept. So the concept is known as load balancer. So now we'll check how the load balancer will help you to solve this particular problem. Now we are going to look how load balancer solve the problem. So अगर आप लोग ने ये load balancer term सुना होगा, तो load balancer का मतलब ही होता है कि it will balance your load. So what are the loads here? The request that are sent concurrently or parallelly to our application. So that request is actually handled by the load balancer. How? We'll see it now. So load balancer actually what it will do. Suppose you send 100 requests. Fine. You send 100 requests. Now load balancer will decide how to divide this particular request. So there are some algorithms that are used. So the algorithms are like round robin. Okay, we are not going to discuss this algorithm in this particular video, but just I'm just letting you know like what are the algorithms that you can okay use. Second one is the least connecting. The third one is the based on IP address, and the fourth one is the weighted distribution. Okay, so based on this particular algorithm, your load balancer will decide how I want to forward this request. Okay, so for now, let us suppose we are using this weighted distribution. Since for this AWS series, we are going to use this weighted distribution. So what I have tell weighted distribution that if I divide the request in equal weights for all of them. So now let us go back to our diagram and we'll see how load balancer actually works. So let me just remove this part. Yeah. So now consider you have a two servers now. Okay, so why we need two servers? Because as we have seen in the server one configuration, if this particular server gets a load, okay, so what happens? This server get crashes. So we won't want that situation. Instead, what we can do, we can have this as a copies of multiple servers. So we can have a server one, we can have a server two, and we can have a server 3, fine. So if we have multiple servers, now it would be easy for us to maintain it. Now the problem arises like how we are going to decide which server should handle what type of load. So that is the scenario where load balancer comes into picture. Okay, so usually क्या होगा कि when you get a request from the client, so now suppose user one send the request, you need to compute some 10 raised to power 18 values. Okay, so client ने देखा कि load balancer, it will go to load balancer. Load balancer क्या करेगा? It will just try, okay, this server is free, I'll just forward this request to server one. Okay, user one का request server one में चला गया. At the same particular time, now user two also send request, user three also send request. फाइन. यूजर टू ने भेजा, उसको भी कुछ 10 raised to power 19 चाहिए था, 10 raised to power 20 चाहिए था यूजर थ्री को. सो वट दिस लोड बैलेंसर विल डू, ओके यूजर टू रिक्वेस्ट इज कम, आई जस्ट फॉरवर्ड दिस टू हियर. यूजर टू का रिक्वेस्ट सर्वर टू पे जाएगा. नाउ दिस all the computation will be done in here in the user 2, and the computation for user 1 is already going on in the server 1. Okay, so this is how the load balancer distributes. Now if you suppose send 100 or 1000 requests. Okay, so 100,000 or 10,000 requests you send. Now what the load balancer will do, it will just check with the servers like what are the available servers for my problem to solve it. So if you have two servers, it will just distribute your request equally, like maybe 500 requests to server 1 and 500 requests to server 2, or 5,000 requests to server 2. So the main functionality of load balancer is to distribute your loads between the servers. Now there is a one more thing. If suppose due to some issue your server 2 is down, okay, so what I am telling, due to some issue your server 2 is down, Now what the load balancer will do, since it checks whether the both the servers are available or not. So since this service is now not available, so what it will do, it will just try to send all these requests to this particular server, the available servers. So that is the main functionality of load balancer. It will distribute your load of API request, and if some of the servers are not available or due to some issue they have been shut down, it will try to distribute the request to remaining servers that are available. If none of them are available, then it won't, it will like throw error, throw error or tell the user that you have to wait for some particular period of time depending on the use case and the logic that you have written. So that is how the load balancer works here. Okay, so let me just give a brief end-to-end flow like how this will work. Okay, so now if you see my screen, I have loaded two images. So one image shows the end-to-end flow like how the client will send the request to AWS load balancer. AWS load balancer will actually manage like what are the healthy servers are available. So what does healthy server means? That server is active, it is not shut down. Okay, and once that it send the request to healthy server, it depends like how many servers you have configured on your load balancer, and once that is processed, it will just process the data and send return back the response. So here on the right side of my image you can see that suppose this particular server was closed, so what will my AWS load balancer, it will just send the request to this particular server and the whole traffic will go to here. Okay, so this is how the overall AWS works, like how the load balancer is very useful when you have a lot of servers and you want to know which server is performing what type of operation. So depending on your use case. That's how the load balancer works. I hope so you got the concept like why we need to use the load balancer. If something I have missed in this particular video, do mention in the comment section. Fine. And do share, do subscribe this channel. From the next particular video, we are going to see the implementation part where we are going to actually work on the code, how you can deploy a Node.js application on EC2. That will be this basic step. The main thing will be like how you can configure the load balancer. Okay.